Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone to another Ref Brandon and the Todd Family YouTube video. Wherever you are, whatever you may be doing, thank you so much for making Ref Brandon and the Todd Family a part of your day. We always greatly appreciate it. Today I'm going to be talking a little bit about the Atlanta Braves winning the 2021 World Series. I was going to talk about it yesterday and move the top 10 countdown back to today. And then I realized that if you pull for a team, no matter what sport it is, if your team wins a championship, you're pretty much on cloud nine for at least a day. So I thought, you know what? I'll let all the Braves fans soak it in, enjoy it, and then on Thursday I'll talk about it. So I'm going to talk about it today, and if you have any comments on it, please feel free to let me know. Now, I've let most of my Braves fans already know that on Thursday I was going to be talking about the Braves, but you can always comment on the channel anytime about anything. But we're going to start out talking about Freddie Freeman, and the question is he back next year? Because a lot of the Braves fans got mad Tuesday night when Freddie Freeman came up for his last at bat, and Joe Buck said this may be Freddie Freeman's last at bat with the Braves. And I know a lot of Braves fans that were like, oh my gosh, can you believe Joe Buck said that? It's like, what are you mad about? He's not supposed to be a Braves fan or a Braves commentator. He is a neutral commentator calling a game that's supposed to be his job of telling you the truth on both sides of the field. And realistically, that may have been Freddie Freeman's last game with the Braves. Now, if you had to ask me on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being no chance he's back and 10 being definitely 100% he'll be back, I would say I'm probably at a 7.5 or an 8. And the only reason I say that is because Freddie Freeman's always said he wanted to stay with the Braves until he won a World Series. Well, now he's won one. So if that was the one thing making him stay, then he'll leave. But now I do think he's a Braves lifer, so I don't think he will leave. But being 32 years old, and right now he's asking for 8 years, and an 8-year deal would take him through the age of 40. And most athletes in any sport, by the time they get to 35, they start slowing down. By the time they get to 37, 38, they really slow down. And by the time they get to 40, they're just a shell of themselves. So do you want to pay that man 35 or 40 million a year when you're probably really only going to get 5, maybe 6 good years? I don't know. But if he's willing to come down to a 6-year deal, I think he'll be back. I think if he comes down to a 6-year deal with the club option for years 7 and 8, he'll be back. But if he sticks in an 8-year deal, I just don't know if the Braves, with the payroll they have, are going to want to pay him for that period of time, knowing that more than likely he's not going to be productive the entire 8 years. But there's a chance. But realistically, that may have been his last game with the Braves. But we know that the Dodgers and the Red Sox and the Yankees can pay him whatever amount of money he wants. And money talks. So if the Braves offer him $25 million a year, which his 8-year deal just expired, and he pretty much made right at $18 million a year, he's probably going to want double that. But let's say the Braves offer him $25 million a year. Freddie Freeman is a California kid. He's from California. So if the Braves offer him $25 million a year, but the Dodgers come along and offer him $40 million a year, then more than likely he's going to the Dodgers. But I think he'll be back. But if you're honest and look at things realistically, there's a chance that could have been his last game with the Braves. And speaking of Joe Buck, that reminds me that so many of the Braves fans, which I do not understand at all, because what the commentators say has no impact on the game. What they don't say has no impact on the game. Those players on the field cannot hear the commentators. So it's not like they're in the batter's box and they step out and say, man, can you believe he said that? They can't hear. What they say has no impact on the game whatsoever. And everybody knows Joe Buck is employed by Fox. He does baseball and football. Brian Anderson is employed by Turner. He does college basketball and baseball. That's what they do. They're play-by-play guys. They don't have a team. They're neutral for all teams and all sports. Now, Ron Darling probably does hate the Braves because he spent many years pitching for the Mets, and now he's the Mets color analyst on TV during the season. So Ron Darling probably does hate the Braves. But everybody that follows baseball knows that Jeff Francoeur and John Smoltz played for the Braves. But every Braves fan got mad the entire World Series every time John Smoltz said something bad about the Braves. And every Braves fan got mad in the division series when Jeff Francoeur was in the booth. And every Braves fan got mad in the NLCS when Jeff Francoeur was in the booth. Every time Francoeur said something bad about the Braves. It's like people don't understand that, yeah, they played for the Braves, but now they're neutral. They're no longer working for the Braves. They're neutral. So they're supposed to be up in the booth talking good about the Braves, talking good about the other team, talking bad about the Braves, talking bad about the other team. But so many people got so mad every time John Smoltz or Jeff Francoeur gave an honest opinion. It didn't bother me because I understand that they're not working for the Braves. They're doing their job. They're neutral. It's okay to pull for the Braves if you're at home watching the game on TV. But when you're getting paid to be a neutral commentator, that's what you're supposed to do. But so many Braves fans got so mad, and I just don't get it. Like, it has no bearing on the game whatsoever. The Braves don't win or lose because of what John Smoltz said. It means nothing. But if you paid attention after the game Tuesday night, when they went back up in the booth and Joe Buck and John Smoltz talked, and John Smoltz was talking about the 95 World Series and how, the players on the team feel because he was there, you could tell that John Smoltz really wanted to cry. He had to hold it back because of his job, but you could tell he was excited about the Braves. So you could tell that even though he was being neutral on TV, he wanted the Braves to win. Will Dansby Swanson be back next year? A lot of people don't like him because of his basically career batting average of like 247. He doesn't bother me. Now, I've got an old co-worker named Mike that was big on Andrelton Simmons. And when the Braves traded Simmons, he was all heartbroken. And I said, Mike, the Braves ain't going to miss Simmons. He's not any good. And you can tell that because since he left the Braves, most people now have no idea who he plays for because he's not any good. He tried to make easy defensive plays hard just to get on a highlight reel. A lot of those plays should have been routine, but he wanted to look good. But Simmons hit 247. He'd have 12 home runs and 50 RBIs. Dansby hits 247, but he'll have 25 home runs, 80-plus RBIs. So at least he's a lot more productive with his 247 batting average. Plus, there's just not a lot of good shortstops in baseball. Most of them can either hit really good but can't field, or they can field really good but can't hit. So I think Dansby's back next year. But we got to give our props to Alex Anthopoulos, because before coming to the Braves, he was general manager for the Blue Jays. And the Blue Jays had about a decade where they were just flat out awful. But Alex Anthopoulos went there and, he put them on the map and made them good. And they're still very competitive. Well, he leaves the Blue Jays and comes to the Braves. And he made some phenomenal moves this year. Now, as much of a fan as I am of Ronald Acuna getting hurt may have been the best thing for the Braves this year because they were a 500 team the entire time he played. But if you look, Acuna getting hurt and Ozuna being suspended, which, by the way, I don't think you'll see Ozuna back in a Brave uniform. Now, this is just my opinion. He's still, as of right now, a member of the organization. But if he plays for the Braves again, I'll be surprised. So I don't expect him back next year. If you have any thoughts on that, please feel free to let me know in the comments section of the video. But the Braves were a 500 team the entire year with Acuna. But with Ozuna being suspended and then Acuna getting hurt, they went out and got Peterson, Rosario, Soler, and Duvall. Now, they had Duvall last year. They let him go because even though he would have led the Braves with RBIs had he been there the entire season, he's only about a 245 hitter. So he's not that good of an overall hitter, but his 245 batting average is very productive. But Joc Pederson can't hit. He'll hit 225, but he's a very good clutch hitter, but he can't hit. So I don't think you'll see Pederson back next year. But if you look at those trades, Pederson won the division series, Rosario won the NLCS, and then Jorge Soler won the World Series because of his bat. So each of those outfielders that the Braves picked up in a trade won one of the playoff series because of their bat. And of course, Jorge Soler won the MVP, which was also good. I think he's the second ever Cuban player to win the World Series MVP, so I'm very proud of him for that. But how many of these outfielders do you think will be back next year? Because we know Acuna is back. And Ozuna, even though I don't think he'll be back, it's not official. And they've got one in the minor leagues named Drew Waters, who's very young, and they say he's going to be the next phenomenal Braves outfielder. So if Drew Waters is ready and Acuna's coming back, and the Braves still have Christian Pache, who did a pretty good job in his limited playing time in 2020, but this year he was awful. But if you've got Acuna in right and Pache in center and Drew Waters in left, there's no more room for outfielders. But as good as Rosario and Soler were, I hate to see them gone. But now they're supposed to have a collective bargaining agreement this offseason, sometime during the winter. And if they have that, they're supposed to vote on whether or not they'll have the DH in the National League. I've never liked it because to me that was always the difference in the American League and the National League, because the American League had the DH, National League didn't. But now I want the DH because I think if they had the DH, the Braves would bring Soler back as their DH. Now, if Pache is still not ready, there's a chance they also bring Rosario back. Or if Waters still ain't ready, there's a chance that they also bring Rosario back. But I don't think at all that Joc Pederson's back next year. If they bring Joc Pederson back, I'll be stunned because, like I said earlier, he's a good clutch hitter. He did good in the division series. But in the regular season, his numbers were just not that good. That's why the Dodgers didn't want him, why the Cubs didn't want him. He had a few clutch hits, but if you look at his career, he's about a 220 hitter. That's what he is. I want to give my props to Max Fried because Max Fried was amazing Tuesday night. Now, there in the first inning, a lot of the Braves fans thought he broke his ankle because one of the Astros players stepped on his foot. And if you look at the replay, it looked brutal. But he was fine. The Astros had their chance in the first inning when they got 2 men on base with 1 out, and they didn't score, and that was pretty much it. And it's funny because Max Fried is left-handed, and Tom Glavine is left-handed. In '95, the Braves won Game 6 because of Tom Glavine, and in 2021, the Braves won Game 6 because of Max Fried. The only difference was in '95, they won 1-0, and this time they won 7-0. So both lefties pitched masterful in Game 6 to win the World Series, but a lot of the Braves fans were worried about Max Fried because the last half of the season, he was by far their best pitcher. It wasn't close. But in the NLCS, his last start against the Dodgers, he was awful. And in Game 2 of the World Series, he gave up a lot of runs early, which is what everybody remembers because you look at his stat line, and his stat line was bad. But all of his runs came in the first couple of innings, and he actually set down 10 or 11 guys in a row before coming out of the game. But, of course, all anybody's going to remember is that he got hammered. He did get hammered in the first couple of innings, but he looked great after that, and Tuesday, after that first inning, I said, okay, Max is on. So when the Braves put up 3, I said, this game's over, but they just kept adding on and adding on. And I got to give my props to Will Smith because for whatever reason, a lot of the Braves fans don't like Will Smith. I don't understand why. His job is to close out the game, and he led baseball this year in games finished. Now, not saves, but games finished, because there was a lot of games that there was not a save situation, but Brian Snitker still sent him out there to close out the game, and he did. But for some reason, a lot of the Braves fans did not like him, but he did not give up a run in the entire postseason, and that's as good as you can get. I want to give my props to Rick Kranitz because a lot of people this year were talking about how bad the Braves bullpen was, and there was a time back around the All-Star break that I was one of them. I would go up to my coworkers that I know that are Braves fans and be like, "What's going on?" Because last year Luke Jackson was terrible. But in 2021, Luke Jackson was their most consistent reliever the entire year. His ERA for the season was 1.98. Now, against the Dodgers in the NLCS, he had a couple of bad outings, but he bounced back in the World Series, and he did fine. But Chris Martin and Tyler Matzek were both amazing last year. And this year, beginning of the season, they were awful. They sent Chris Martin down at one time this year because he was struggling so bad. But last year, he was great. They sent A.J. Minter down earlier this year because of how bad he was. When he got recalled, he was great. And he did not give up any runs in the postseason until the World Series when he had a couple of bad outings, just like Tyler Matzek did. He gave up, I think, 3 runs in total in the World Series, but nothing against the Brewers and nothing against the Dodgers. But Will Smith gave up nothing the whole postseason. But I just want to give props to Rick Kranitz because the Braves bullpen this year took a lot of scrutiny because it struggled a lot during the season. But as the year went on, it got better and better and better. Now, I also like Rick Kranitz because if you watch him during the games, when he picks the phone up to make the call to the bullpen, he's sitting there, and of course you don't know what he's saying, but he's sitting there with this smug look on his face. He's just going. So he would be the world's worst poker player. But as a pitching coach, I think he did a phenomenal job. And speaking of coaches, I hope the Braves bring Ron Washington back next year to coach third. I don't know if I've ever seen a third base coach be that aggressive, and I, for one, am a big fan of it. I like it, but I also want to give my props to Tyler Matzek, not just because of how he pitched this season in the second half and how he pitched in the playoffs, but Tyler Matzek was actually out of the game of baseball about 5 years ago because he got the yips, which is what they call it in baseball, but it basically just means he fell apart. I don't know if it was a mental breakdown or what it was, but he had to step away and actually quit the game for a while and actually got a regular everyday job. And I don't know enough of the backstory to know who got him back in the game, but somebody that knew he was a pitcher came in contact with him and got him back in the game. And, of course, the Braves got him in a trade deal from the Rockies, and even then his numbers were just average. Nothing to brag about, but, good enough to get by. But this year, as the year progressed, he got better and better and better. And then by the time the Brewers came calling in the first round of the playoffs, he was amazing. And I think Rick Kranitz also had something to do with that. So Rick Kranitz definitely needs to be back next year. But if you're a longtime baseball fan, especially if you're a Braves follower, you may know another story kind of like that. It involves a former Brave. His name was Rick Ankiel, and he at one time pitched for the Cardinals. And he pitched one time against the Braves, and the Braves couldn't touch him. I mean, he could have pitched 20 innings that day and threw 500 pitches, and the Braves might have scored 2. I mean, he was amazing. But then a couple of years later, when he pitched for the Cardinals against the Braves, he was all over the place, and he was throwing balls everywhere. And he might have lasted 2 innings, maybe, and that's pushing it. And then the game ended, and as soon as the game ended, he got sent down to the minor leagues because he couldn't pitch anymore. And then I thought he was out of the game. Well, he actually came back up with the Braves about 5 years later as an outfielder. He had moved to center field, and he was actually on the Braves' 2010 team that made the playoffs under Bobby Cox, and he actually hit a home run against the San Francisco Giants in the division series that year when the Braves got eliminated. So there are other stories like Tyler Matzek where you see pitchers either move positions or get back in the game, but it makes you wonder sometimes how you have all that talent and all of a sudden you just lose it. But I want to give Tyler Matzek props for sticking with it and not given up. But I've got a good friend of mine that I work with. His name is Ethan. And ever since him and I started working together, I've always told him that the last team in the state of Georgia that won a championship was the Braves. And the next team in the state of Georgia that's going to win a championship will be the Braves. So it's good to know that I was right, because he always thought I was crazy, because when he first started working with me, the Braves were going through some of their, as I guess you want to call it, rotten years, but they've definitely came a long way since then. And I'm excited about next year, because besides the fact that they might be losing Freeman and might be losing Swanson, but I do think both those guys will be back. But possibility that one or both of them may not be. But outside of those two guys, the majority of the Braves roster is 30 years old and younger. So there's no reason why the Braves can't at least make it back to the World Series one time in the next 5 years. Not to say they're going to win 5 World Series, but to make it back one time in 5 years is not bad. But look at the Dodgers. They've had the best team in baseball for 5 years, and they've won 1 World Series. So, just because you won it this year, you can't all of a sudden say, man, we're gonna repeat. We're gonna win 3 of the next 5, because that's probably not going to happen. But with the roster they have and the talent they have coming back next year, I don't see any reason why you can't make it back to the World Series at least one time in the next 5 years. Now, if you look at the rotation next year, Anderson's back, Fried's back, Morton's back, and I think Tucker Davidson will be in the rotation. I think Kyle Muller will be healthy in the rotation. Now, Mike Soroka is saying he'll pitch next year, but I don't put much stock in that. I think Mike Soroka is going to be the next Kerry Wood. He's going to pitch about 3 starts and be out about 3 months, and pitch about 2 starts and be out about 2 months. So you can add Mike Soroka to that if you want to. Hopefully I'll be wrong, because I enjoy watching Soroka pitch. But when you're as young as he is, and you're already having that many health issues and that many physical problems staying healthy, I just don't think it's going to get any better. So hopefully Soroka will be there, but I don't look forward to it. But I've got one shout out I got to do in today's video as well. This shout out goes out to my man Robert, who lives in the upstate of South Carolina. He subscribed to the channel yesterday, and I told him, even though I'm talking the Braves tomorrow, I will still give you a shout out. And of course, he is a Clemson fan, and he wanted me to say, go Tigers. So Robert, thank you so much for subscribing to the channel. If you have any thoughts on anything I've discussed today, please feel free to let me know. And in one side note in the world of Major League Baseball, in case you have not heard, last night at about 8:30 or 9 o'clock, somewhere along in there, I got word that Gerald Dempster Posey III, better known as Buster Posey, who of course is the catcher for the San Francisco Giants, announced his retirement. Now, it's kind of sudden, because there's been no talk about it. There's been no rumor about it. And then all of a sudden last night, he's retiring tomorrow. So he is retiring. He's only 34 years old, so I'm not quite sure why, because outside of the 1 year when he got hurt and missed the rest of the season, he's been relatively healthy. And the Giants finally look like they're turning the corner and starting to win again. Of course, Buster Posey won 3 World Series with the Giants, and then after they got rid of Bruce Bochy, they had a couple of years where they were awful. But under Gabe Kapler, they appear like they're finally turning the corner again, and he had a productive season this year, but he decided he wants to walk away. So if you think he's a Hall of Famer, please feel free to let me know. I enjoyed watching him. He had, I believe, like a .304 career batting average. I believe that's right off the top of my head. But that's good, but he only had, I think, right at 1,500 career hits. And if you put somebody in the Hall of Fame for not anywhere close to 2,000 hits, you can put anybody in the Hall of Fame. So even though his batting average is Hall of Fame worthy, I don't think his hits or home runs or RBIs is Hall of Fame worthy. So I hate to see him walk away now, because if he could have got the 2,000 career hits, I think he would definitely be a Hall of Famer, but I think he's walking away too soon to be a Hall of Famer. But I wanted to throw that out there since we were discussing Major League Baseball. And one final time, anything to say on anything I've talked about today, please feel free to let me know. And go Braves. I'm already looking forward to next year. And that's going to wrap it up for today's Ref Brandon and the Todd Family YouTube video. Until next time, it's Ref Brandon saying, just like in pro wrestling, life can be over by the count of 3. Tell your friends and family how much you love them. Bye.